From Wounds to Wholeness, a cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and Christian framework for trauma recovery. My name is Olufalake Ogunyemi. This presentation synthesizes my trauma counseling coursework with my personal theory of counseling. It focuses on cognitive behavioral therapy as an empirically supported treatment for PTSD. Additionally, it integrates Christian worldview principles where appropriate. Lastly, it includes a case study application of CBT with a long-term client. Trauma is widespread, but not everyone who experiences trauma develops PTSD. However, approximately 6% of Americans will meet criteria for PTSD at some point, with women being nearly twice as likely as men. These events deeply disrupt one's sense of safety, control, and worldview. CBT, developed by Aaron Beck and expanded by Judith Beck and others, is a structured, present-oriented therapy. It is highly effective in treating PTSD by helping clients understand how their thoughts influence their feelings and behaviors. This theory aligns with the belief that healing begins with truth. CBT is an evidence-based treatment proven effective for trauma, depression, and anxiety. It focuses on restructuring distorted cognitions, increasing emotional regulation, and modifying behavior. CBT empowers clients to challenge and change maladaptive thoughts and beliefs that maintain distress. These constructs include core beliefs, dysfunctional assumptions, and automatic negative thoughts. Some core beliefs: foundational, deep ingrained beliefs about oneself, the world, and the future, mostly informed in childhood. They are general, inflexible, and overgeneralized. For example, one might say, "I am not worthy of love," or "the world is an unsafe place." Some dysfunctional assumptions: they are intermediate beliefs, rules, or attitudes that originate from core beliefs and influence how one understands situations and responds to them. For example, one might say, "I should always please others." Automatic negative thoughts: impulsive, often negative thoughts that arise in response to specific situations. They can be distorted, exaggerated, or irrational. For example, one might say, "I'm going to fail at this relationship," or "no one likes me." CBT is a collaborative process where the therapist and client actively engage in the treatment process. It focuses on real-life problems and applies specific strategies to address those problems. The main goal of CBT is to identify and modify unhelpful patterns of thinking and behavior that contribute to emotional distress. Through this process, clients experience positive change in mood, functioning, and overall quality of life. CBT is not a one-size-fits-all approach. At the start of treatment, most clinicians develop a personalized case formulation based on the client's specific challenges, strengths, and patterns. This formulation changes throughout therapy and is often shared with the client to encourage awareness and collaboration. In the first 1 or 2 sessions, clients and clinicians work together to identify the problems to focus on and set measurable, realistic goals. Depending on priority, the work advances, addressing the most urgent of distressing concerns first. A key component of CBT's effectiveness is the structure of the session. To promote continuity, each session starts with a brief emotional check-in and a review of the previous session. Together, the clinician and client set an agenda to ensure focus. Homework is reviewed, followed by problem solving and new interventions. Sessions end with a summary and the setting of new homework to encourage between sessions progress. Individuals with depression benefited mostly from including religious and spiritual elements into treatment. Integrating biblical truths can provide a spiritual anchor, especially for clients navigating grief, identity confusion, and abandonment. This emphasizes the importance of clinical assessment and, when appropriate, incorporating clients' spiritual frameworks in CBT and other therapeutic modalities. Integrating forgiveness within a Christian CBT framework supports emotional recovery, spiritual growth, and identity transformation following trauma. For individuals coping with trauma, faith-integrated models align with psychotherapeutic and spiritual healing, supporting deeper resilience, revised trauma narratives, and a restored sense of purpose. Spiritual assessment and intake includes faith history, spiritual coping, church involvement, and meaning making in the initial evaluation. Scripture-informed reframing uses biblical metaphors such as God as a shepherd, a comforter, to challenge trauma-related cognitive distortions. Prayer practice includes complement CBT grounding and mindfulness exercises with prayer or meditative scripture reflection. Engage church support networks. With client permission, connect them to spiritual mentors, men's or women's groups, or bereavement ministries to reinforce therapy gains. Here, forgiveness incorporates guided forgiveness dialogues or letter writing exercising within CBT modules focused on anger and trauma. Some anger management tools combines CBT techniques such as thought records and relaxation with prayer, spiritual meditation, or reflective silence. Increasing hope includes faith-based journaling practices highlighting gratitude, spiritual gratitude, and hope-filled scriptures. Esteem gains, which is also identity reconstruction, uses CBT's belief restructuring to reinforce a faith-based identity. I am a beloved child of God, to refrain from trauma-related shame. This client's presentation reflects complex trauma with long-standing emotional pain rooted in early relational loss, strained family dynamics, and ongoing caregiving burdens. Her attachment to her students reflect a need for secure relationships. High rates of trauma and mental health disorders in this population highlight the importance of early screening, especially in socioeconomically vulnerable settings. Some presenting problems: chronic depression and anxiety, which consists of persistent low mood likely impacted by unresolved grief, relational strain, and life stressors. My client's unresolved grief and loss. Her father died during her young adulthood. There are unresolved emotional pain. She also is currently experiencing anticipatory grief related to her mother's declining health and placement in a nursing care. She has issues with relational isolation, so she's emotionally distant and strained from her siblings, her family, and friends. She's single, has never been married, limited adult support system outside of her children. She also serves as a caretaker, which is also overloading her responsibilities. She is a co-parent to 3 adult children. She works in a helping profession. She frequently overextends in caregiving roles, leading to emotional depletion and neglect of self-care. Spiritual coping and identity struggles. She identifies as a Christian. Faith is a source of hope, but raises questions of meaning, fairness, or abandonment amid suffering. Potential for integrating spiritual values into recovery and meaning making. functional impairment, ongoing distress impacting sleep, eating, interpersonal boundaries, and occupational performance. These symptoms align with trauma-based responses, hypervigilance, emotional dysregulation, and self-neglect. Her difficulty trusting others and her over-functioning in relationships shows patterns of codependency and unresolved grief. The CBT triangle, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, was used to help her track triggers and connect present-day challenges with early learned beliefs. Sessions involved exploring cognitive distortions. Part of her treatment goals and interventions include to reduce depressive and anxiety symptoms by identifying and restructuring negative automatic thoughts and core beliefs. So the goal is to replace "I am not enough. I must earn love through helping others." Next, improve emotional regulation and stress tolerance by increasing awareness of emotional triggers, practicing grounding techniques, and developing healthier coping strategies. Next, enhance interpersonal functioning by establishing and maintaining appropriate boundaries, reducing conflict, and improving communication with siblings and others. We also address unresolved grief and caregiver burden by exploring lost narratives, fostering self-compassion, and reframing spiritual meaning through faith-integrated CBT techniques. We also talked about increasing self-care behaviors and behavior activation by scheduling pleasurable and mastery-building activities and improving sleep, nutrition, and rest routines. Lastly, to support reduction of maladaptive coping, such as our alcohol use, through psychoeducation, identifying high-risk situations, and developing alternative coping mechanisms. Homework assignments, mood logs, and behavior experiments were used regularly. Boundary work was emphasized with role plays. We used a collaborative case formulation model to empower the client as an active participant in her healing. Integrating faith-based practice, what we did was restructure negative core beliefs using cognitive techniques and scriptural reframing. For example, "I am not enough" with Philippians 4:13. "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Integrate reflective journaling on biblical truths related to identity, worth, and purpose. We enhanced emotional regulation through faith-based informed practices. So we incorporated prayer, spiritual meditation, and breathing exercises paired with scripture. Psalms 46, verse 10, "Be still and know that I am God," to reduce anxiety and overwhelm. We use other psalms for processing grief and emotional pain, and to promote healthy boundaries and relationships through the lens of stewardship and grace. We reframe caregiving not as a self-sacrifice, but as stewardship that includes caring for oneself. Mark 12:31. Love your neighbor as yourself. We also discuss relational forgiveness and assertiveness as spiritual growth. We process grief and fostered meaning through theological reflection and narrative work. I encourage the client to explore God's presence amid loss and suffering, to support grief through guided lament and faith-centered hope for healing. Additionally, we increase self-care and behavioral activation with spiritual meaningful activities to include church attendance, devotional time, worship music, or service work as part of the behavioral activation plan. We use gratitude journal as a spiritual discipline to reinforce positive affect. We also tried to reduce maladaptive coping, the alcohol use, by strengthening spiritual support systems. Together, we explored how faith community involvement, accountability, and prayer can support sobriety. We discussed the biblical view of the body as a temple to foster motivation for health. These interventions offered both psychological healing and spiritual validation. The client found comfort in connecting scripture to her emotional journey. Prayer and reflection helped reinforce adaptive beliefs and provided an internal resource in moments of distress. Some outcomes and reflections. The client's progress reflects combined impact of trauma-informed CBT and spiritually integrated care. Over time, her insight grew into how early relational wounds influence her current self-perception, behaviors, and emotional reactivity. Cognitive interventions assisted her in confronting and challenging long-standing distortions like "I must earn love through sacrifice" and "I am only valuable when needed." Her decreased use of alcohol and increase in self-regulation tools, journaling, emotional tracking, spiritual reflection, indicate improved coping. Relationship dynamics continue to challenge her. However, she is making small changes in setting limits and protecting her emotional energy. Spiritually, the client's faith has been a stabilizing force. Prayer, gospel music, scripture, and Christian metaphors became sources of strength. This mirrors findings by Wade, 2016, who highlighted the power of integrating spirituality into trauma therapy for clients seeking meaning-making and recovery. In her case, aligning therapeutic work with faith principles enhanced therapeutic engagement and emotional resilience. Finally, this case confirms that CBT, when adapted to include clients' core spiritual values, becomes not only effective but transformational, restoring not just function but hope. Some key takeaways. CBT is a powerful evidence-based framework for addressing trauma, especially when personalized to the client's thoughts, patterns, behaviors, and emotional responses. Faith integration deepens healing by providing clients with a redemptive lens for understanding suffering, identity, and recovery, especially in the context of grief and relational wounds. Trauma-informed care requires patience and flexibility, particularly when working with long-term clients who carry complex emotional histories and caregiving burdens. Spiritual practices like prayer, scripture reflection, and journal can complement CBT techniques such as cognitive restructuring, behavioral activation, and emotional regulation. Therapists must honor the whole person, including their spiritual worldview, as part of ethical, culturally competent, and effective care. This experience reinforced the importance of integrating professional expertise with spiritual sensitivity. For clients like this one, spiritual identity is not separate from mental health. It is central. By creating space for both evidence-based techniques and biblically rooted truths, I saw more meaningful engagement, trust, and lasting growth. As I continue on my professional journey, this case reminds me that trauma therapy is not just about symptom reduction. It is about restoring wholeness, including emotional, relational, and spiritual dimensions. When thinking about CBT, some future applications highlights the importance of collaborative, multidisciplinary care, particularly when serving clients from faith-based communities. Mental health professionals and spiritual leaders can work together to offer holistic support, balancing psychological treatment with spiritual guidance. For urban women disproportionately affected by trauma, poverty, and limited access to care, culturally congruent CBT, especially when integrated with faith, is valuable. It honors their lived experiences, reinforces their spiritual identity, and builds trust in the therapeutic relationship. This approach enhances engagement and promotes long-term healing not only for the individual, but for the community. Thank you.